Hey team, and welcome back to another video in our Astrological Magical Elections video series. Today I am here to talk to you all about the magical electional opportunities that we are going to have between our Capricorn Full Moon and our Cancer New Moon between July 3rd and July 17th. So last time I was unable to get a video out in time for the Gemini New Moon, and that was because I was called away to attend to a family medical emergency. I had a family member in the hospital and it didn't look too good, but thankfully we are past that and everybody is doing fine right now. I also apologize if there's kind of like a weird sound in this video. I have a fan on behind me, so I don't know how much of that sound is going to get kind of caught into the microphone. Hopefully not any at all. But please allow this, please allow it, because it is hot here in Texas and I need it. So please let me have a fan, please. So unfortunately, we don't have a whole lot to talk about with the waning, with this waning full moon to new moon cycle that we're in. I only have two electional opportunities to share, but they're going to be elections that everybody can participate in. So that's the good, that's the bad news. There's not a whole lot. The good news is that everybody will be able to use them if you need them. And this is just kind of an awkward time of the year. Like, this is just something that happens every year, to where we, especially when we're talking about Lunar Mansion talismans, which is primarily what we utilize or talk about here on this channel, it's very sensitive to the moon phase. And so as the year progresses and the signs that the moon is in changes as she waxes and wanes, that changes her relationship with different lunar mansions. And so there are some mansions that are much more difficult to work with constructively in the waxing phase or the waning phase. And it just so happens that right now, where the moon is waning, from like the 22nd to the like 8th mansion right now, this is kind of filled with a lot of those lunar mansions that are more naturally aligned with the waxing moon, and it's a bit harder to come up with constructive uses for them in the waning moon cycle. So that's just kind of where we're at right now. As we kind of move further into like late summer and the autumn, we'll kind of start to see some more mansions open up for the moon when she's waning. But for right now, this is what we have to work with. So, and that's fine. It happens, it's just a part of the game. So let's go ahead and get started. Our first electional opportunity is going to be for the first lunar mansion. So typically in a waxing moon phase, the first lunar mansion would be utilized for energy, for helping us create energy, for helping us to be motivated, for helping us to move forward and completing projects, helping us focus on things to do and like completing those projects, getting us the momentum to move forward on projects that we may have been avoiding or been putting off, and helping us to overcome procrastination and avoidant work styles. But in a waning moon, we have to kind of turn that around to where we now kind of internalize it and make it reductionary. So now we're focused on reducing energy, or kind of reclaiming energy and cutting ties to situations that we may have overcommitted to or no longer want to be heavily involved in. That's really where we're focused on in the first lunar mansion. So in this way, we're looking at it more as like rest, reclamation of energy, and helping us sort of reprioritize and strategize what things are actually important to us to get those done after we have already said yes to a bunch of things, helping us be like, actually, I don't want to do that anymore, and come to that realization and re-strategize based on that need. So this mansion can be very useful for people who feel kind of overwhelmed. Oh, well, I was going to introduce my co-host Bubbles, but she has jumped across the chasm to the cat tree. So I can't do that right now, maybe later. But as I was saying, this mansion is useful for when we feel overwhelmed, helping us reduce our workload and getting to understand and know about the things that are most important to us as we're kind of moving through what we need to do. So for this election for the North American continent, it's going to take place on July 9th at around 6:30 in the morning. So right about at sunrise is where we have this set, and we can see that because we have the sun on the ascendant here. But the moon in this chart is going to be conjoined the midheaven in the first lunar mansion, and she's going to be applying this square to the sun. And this one I think is a really interesting one, just kind of symbolically for like what the moon does and her relationship with the sun and kind of her synodic cycle as she kind of moves throughout the zodiac and applies different aspects to him. When the moon is waning, she's returning to the sun, and she kind of at the same time returns the light that she has borrowed or is using from the sun while she kind of completes this waning part of her phase. So there's this kind of the symbolism of the moon which can represent, of course, our own bodily energy, kind of returning to the sun and kind of giving back energy that it has borrowed to the sun, which typically represents like the vital force, the thing that keeps us going, our drive, our focus in life, those kinds of things. So there's a really neat symbolism here of the moon reconnecting with the sun while she's also kind of returning to the sun, showing this sort of this sort of unity, or this upcoming unity, I guess, at the conjunction between the body's energy and sort of the mind's or the will's energy to like move forward and, you know, find things that are worth pursuing. At the same time, we want to make sure that the moon is unafflicted by Mars or Saturn, which is the case, that the ascendant degree is unafflicted by Mars or Saturn, which is also true. And that the ruler of the first house, who in this instance is the moon, because Cancer's on the ascendant, is fine and unafflicted as well. And that is the setup here. So all in all, just a pretty simple, straightforward waning first lunar mansion talisman for those in North America. And I think this is a theme that we're going to see repeated in the other election charts as well. For Western Europe and Northern Africa, this first Lunar Mansion chart is going to take place on July 9th at around 6:13, so kind of around the same time of day that we were looking at for the North American version. And here we're going to have the same thing, the moon very close to the midheaven in the first mansion and applying that square to the sun. Squares are fine aspects to utilize unless it's between like malefic planets. We typically don't want that. Generally, the rule of thumb is that any aspect is better than no aspect, but I don't like oppositions because they're trash. And so generally the idea is any kind of connection between the planets that we're looking for is better than them not being connected at all. And then we just kind of like weigh what the cost benefit analysis of each aspect. Generally, of course, conjunctions are better because they're stronger, trines after that, and then sextiles because they're in sort of like the harmonious group, and then squares are doable, and then oppositions are, as I said, trash. I don't like oppositions very much. So even though a trine or a sextile between these signs or between these planets would be great, a square is not bad, especially since there's a mutual reception involved where the moon is in Aries, which is the sun's exaltation, and the sun is in Cancer, which is the moon's domicile. So they have a nice agreement which helps kind of soften the square to make it much less abrasive, which is normally what we expect from squares. Let's see. We kind of have our similar thing. Mars and Saturn don't interfere with the election at all, either from the moon or the ascendant degree, and of course the moon rules the first house, so we have to worry about her. Again, we don't have another planet to pull in to worry about. And I also really wanted to focus on having the sun on the ascendant in these elections, just because the sun as a source of energy, having that like in the part of the chart that represents the individual who will be working with the talisman, I thought helped kind of solidify the symbolism for what the talisman was supposed to be for, helping to regain and recharge a little bit, as opposed to just like spending energy or throwing it into the void. And then finally for Australia, this election will take place on July 9th at 23:54, so just before midnight. And here we have it kind of flipped to where the North American and the Western Europe, North African versions were focused on the moon on midheaven. Here we have the moon on the ascendant in the first mansion. She's still applying that square to the sun, now in the fourth house. And the ruler of the first house is now Mars in Leo, which I liked because Mars in Leo is kind of conjoined this Venus, which I thought was a nice kind of bolster to the Mars, giving it like a place to rest a bit. Plus being in the fifth house isn't bad for that kind of thing either. And then, yeah, we're kind of running through our same checklist of the moon's unafflicted by Saturn. We don't really worry so much about a Mars affliction if Mars rules the first house. And then, let's see what else. Oh, the ascendant degree is unafflicted by Saturn. And then Mars is unafflicted by Saturn. We're not having to worry about the opposition between the two planets yet. But this will probably be as far as we'll go with Mars signification for a while. Because once Mars moves into once Mars dips into Virgo, this opposition with Saturn will be much more significant. So we'll watch out for that in the future. And our second and final electional opportunity for this full moon is going to be for the second Lunar Mansion. And the second Lunar Mansion is a really great one when it comes to emotional health and sort of like handling emotional subjects. Specifically, the second Lunar Mansion in a waning phase is conducive for the removal of anger, is how like the Picatrix and ancient texts describe it, for the removal of anger. Specifically, the texts talk about it being used in an instance to where there is some lord or official or somebody who was upset with you, and you're like, what if you weren't anymore, actually? Like, what if you were just no longer upset with me? And sort of this removal of anger, like making somebody not upset with you anymore. And that's definitely an option. You can definitely utilize the second lunar mansion to remove anger and spite and hatred from a interaction or from a relationship, to help smooth over relationships that maybe didn't end well, to kind of help get closure, or maybe like start up a new relationship with that individual, like, bygones be bygones, or kind of working it out and coming to an understanding. And the second lunar mansion has a strong theme of like forgiveness in a waning moon phase. And forgiveness can be about, many things. I like to recommend the second lunar mansion for people who have a lot of like regret about the way things ended, or regret like actions or things that they have done in the past, kind of using it more as like self-forgiveness and understanding. And of course, you do have your typical usage of the second lunar mansion as like helping to forgive another person, or helping to another person to forgive you, and using it as a way to kind of like help make somebody a little bit more open to like a real apology, and like moving forward and reconciling that. The second lunar mansion can be very helpful for. So looking at our election for North America, and just North America. Got confused there. Looking for our election in North America, this one takes place on July 10th at 1 in the morning. And here we're going to have the moon in the second lunar mansion on the ascendant, and she's going to be applying the trine to Venus in Leo. And I think this is a really great planet for the moon to apply to in second lunar mansions, probably my absolute favorite, because Venus is naturally significant of reconciliation, of understanding, of empathizing, and that connecting that the second lunar mansion can accomplish. And Venus as sort of like the planet that is opposite to Mars in the scheme, where Mars represents like anger and contention and conflict and things that pull us apart, Venus represents more of the forgiveness, the understanding, and the cohesion, and the things that we share in common, which can be a really great thing to remind people of when we're kind of navigating these more potentially difficult relationships, or trying them again, or things like that. Still looking out and making sure that the ruler of the first house and the moon are unafflicted, and that's still the case here. We don't really have a conflict with Saturn here. We're kind of on the fence here with what we can accomplish with Mars and Leo, because once we dip into Virgo, we will be within orbit of that Saturn square, so we're kind of holding off on that for right now. But this will be, like I said, about as far as we can go with Mars in Leo for a while. So we won't see much of Mars after this. And it's really going to suck, because Mars is going to go into Virgo for a while and oppose Saturn, and Venus is going to go retrograde towards the end of the month, and that'll be like 2 planets we can't work with. Saturn's already retrograde, so it's just a lot. And Mercury will retrograde soon, it looks like, so it's going to be tough for me. So the Western Europe and Northern African version of the second lunar mansion chart is going to take place on July 10th at around 6:30. This chart's set for 6:28. And here we're going to focus on the moon in the second mansion in the 10th house, and she is also applying that trine to Venus, just like she was in the North American version. We're going to keep like a 22, 23 degree Cancer ascendant, I forgot what I was going to say, as our focus here. And the reason why the moon has such distance from the midheaven here is that we want to maintain a Cancer ascendant. And you might be able to play with this, now that I think about it, to get Cancer a little bit later, if you so chose. But what we don't want to do is we don't want the ascendant to move into Leo, because that'll cause a situation where the sun, as the ruler of Leo, would be in the 12th house, and I don't like election charts with the ruler of the first house in the 12th house. They never quite work out very well. So we want to avoid the sun in the 12th house as the ruler of the ascendant. So we want to keep a Cancer ascendant, keep the moon. And so that's why the moon is here. This was like about as angular as I could get her, while maintaining the Cancer ascendant. But there might be room to play here to get a later one if you need it. So go ahead and try that out. But again, let me get rid of some of these arrows here so this is a bit cleaner to see. But again, kind of the same things that we're looking out for. The moon is unafflicted by Mars or Saturn. The ascendant degree is unafflicted by Mars or Saturn. And so it's just a good chart to move into. I kind of like Mercury and Cancer here, because there's something to be said about like Mercury and Cancer and speaking from the heart, I guess would be the best way to say it. Like giving words to your emotions and how you feel about things and how things have made you feel, which can be useful when navigating this kind of stuff, they say. So our final election that we're going to cover is going to be the Australian version of this chart, and this takes place on July 10th at around 6 in the morning at 5:54 a.m. And here we're going to have the moon in that second lunar mansion here on the midheaven. And whereas the North American and the Western Europe, North African versions had the moon applying the trine to Venus, we're not going to have that yet. And instead, we're going to keep going with that square to the sun here. The trine to Venus, I definitely feel like is a superior planetary partner choice in the second lunar mansion. But the sun will do the job. It will help provide emotional clarity and understanding to situations and help people kind of like lay their cards on the table. Hi, Bubbles. Are you back? You see me gesturing and now you want to pet? Nope. Ah, she got away. But it'll help bring some like emotional clarity and understanding to how we feel and what we're feeling and help people kind of put their cards on the table to reach those levels of like insight into how one another operates, how each other operates. That can still be very helpful. The ruler of the first house in this is going to be Mercury here. And Mercury's doing okay, far enough from the sun to not worry about combustion. We're past that. Not square Mars or Saturn. The ascendant degree is also not square Mars or Saturn, and neither is the moon. So just another, pretty good election for the second lunar mansion here. Would have been better if the moon applied to Venus instead, but hey, we do the best with what we have. So there was one other election that I kind of wanted to talk about because I wanted to make sure to, get ahead of it if somebody was thinking about making a talisman for this or something. But around, like on July 13th-ish, there could potentially be an opportunity for individuals to make Pleiades fixed star talismans, but I don't like the election very much. So typically when we're making fixed star elections, we want the stars projected ecliptical degree on the ascendant, and for the Pleiades, that's around 0 degrees Gemini. And so we can have that, and we can have the moon applying to it, kind of like this. The other thing that we would want is the moon to immediately apply an aspect to a planet that is of the nature of that star. And for the Pleiades, they're of the nature of the moon and Mars, and the moon is immediately applying a square to Mars. Now, generally, squares, I kind of teed this up, I guess, earlier, but generally squares to malefic planets are things we want to avoid, which is true, unless they're topical to what we're doing. So, like, if the moon's applying to a malefic planet that is the ruler of the first house, that's fine. Or is a planet that is similar to the thing being done, like Mars, like the moon applying to a square to Mars in like a conflict or contest talisman, that's fine. I can handle that. That makes sense why Mars could be involved in that. Or, like in this case, when that planet is one of the nature, is a planet that's of the nature of that star. So, like, the Pleiades are the nature of the moon and Mars, so we can have the moon connect with Mars in a little bit more of, like, a difficult setting, and that can be fine because it's topical. Mars is a kind of a co-ruler or a co-significator of that star, kind of shares in the power of that star somewhat. So that's fine. So we wouldn't, but generally we would avoid this. However, what we would always avoid is a square with an uninvolved malefic, we'll say. And that's what we have here with this Saturn. Keep an eye on this Saturn here in early Pisces, which will be squared the moon and the ascendant if we did something like this, or, so just be mindful if you were eyeballing this election and seeing it like maybe something that you wanted to do. I don't really recommend it because the square to Saturn is going to cause some problems, so I don't recommend it. But that's your early warning, your Ryan's early bad election detection system. So yeah, hopefully soon we'll have a more conventional Pleiades election. The Pleiades heliacal rise has already passed. Now we're kind of getting ready for those summer heliacal rises like Sirius, Procyon, Regulus, Alcaid. So kind of get to looking about when those heliacal rises are for your location, so you can kind of get set up for talismanic creation if that's something that you're called to for any of those stars. But all right, everybody, thank you guys. That's all I have for you. Thank you guys so much for watching and being here. Sorry I wasn't able to do the last one, but I missed you, and hopefully you missed this. And we're back for now. Hopefully it will be quite a while before I have to go and attend to another family medical thing. But thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. A special shout out to patrons. I really appreciate your support. And if you're interested in checking out the Patreon and seeing all the bonuses that come with it, including like group mentoring, free talismanic materia every season, a 6-hour-long introduction to astrological magic, go check it out. I'd love to have you. And everybody take care, and I will see you all again on the Cancer New Moon.